Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for watching Once and Often. I'm Jasmine. Joining me today is Miss Teela, the sobriety entrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining me, Miss Teela. How are you?
Hi, I am wonderful. I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm a little nervous, but I'm so ready to get into this. I've been so excited ever since you asked me to do this. So I'm really grateful that we get to do this and I get to be here right now. So I'm just really excited.
As am I. Thank you so much. So every time, like I stated, Teela, I get so excited in these moments. What we want to talk about today is Miss Teela's story. Miss Teela is now 3 years sober. Is that correct?
Mhm. Yep, 3 years.
After an 18-year addiction,
Yep. Mm.
which started when you were 15 years old.
Yes, 15, just a young buck.
But it happens, and so to that, I just want to congratulate you on your sobriety,
Thank you.
and just as I stated, because my birth mother, had a drug addiction. She relinquished her parental rights. She gave her children up. As an adoptee, I always wondered, like, how do you start that? Like, what gets you into that lifestyle? But what we don't understand and what we don't realize is that it can come from trauma. It can come from
Hmm.
medical procedures or anything can
Yep.
start a drug use. So I
Yes.
just wanted to jump in that because when I saw your story, I was like, 15, that's kind of young. At 15, I was just a sophomore in high school. And so you started a drug usage. Now, was it you who got addicted through a medical procedure?
It wasn't a procedure, but it did start through a doctor.
What's the story behind that?
Okay, so when I was 15, I was a sophomore like you. Um, no, I think I was a freshman. I was a freshman when this happened. So I might have been around 14. Well, I had an issue at school with another girl over a boy. You know how teenagers are. Girls can be so mean. And I am very sensitive. I've always been like that. I'm not so much anymore as I used to get my feelings hurt so bad. Once you kind of learn who you really are and you know yourself and love yourself more, that doesn't happen as much. But when I was young, I was very, very sensitive, influenced very easily. And I was having an issue with another girl at school. And she was making my life hell to say the least. So I started having panic attacks and anxiety, and never in my life knew what that was. Didn't even know what anxiety was. So my grandma took me to our pediatrician and he put me on Xanax. And Xanax is extremely addictive and it causes memory loss and it causes you to do things that you would never do because it's kind of like alcohol in a way where it just kind of like shuts down the nervous system and the brain, and so you're not yourself, you're not thinking. Well, he put me on those for the anxiety, and really I didn't really ever take them until I met a boy. It's so weird how all of this happened. Like, when I look back at it, I almost think that I was meant to be right here. Well, I was meant to become an addict, and I was meant to do all the things that I've done that led me to being where I'm at now. So because God placed people and situations in my life for this to all happen, because if I had never met the boy that I met at the time, I don't think I would have ever really taken the Xanax to become addicted to it. So this guy was older. He was a partier. He was already out of high school. So when I met him, a lot of my cheerleading friends and my, I don't know if you want to call them preppy friends, my goody two shoe friends, a lot of them were mad at me over the girl that hated me over the boy, right? And so it kind of pushed me towards the new guy, the party guy. And I kind of found my solace in him, and partying and stuff. Well, that eventually led to me becoming addicted to him. And we would, go to a friend's house, and this friend, their house was the party house. Their mom was never home. So we would go there and party and take all these Xanaxes, and I had prescriptions for it, so they were readily available, and we would just take them like candy and just party. And yeah, it was crazy. And so that eventually led to, marijuana use, alcohol use, cocaine, and it just, trickled
It
down
just
from there.
and
But
I want us to just take a moment to realize just how easy it starts because, in
yeah,
ignorance, we don't know. I
we
certainly
don't
don't know what
know.
that's like. Yeah, we don't know. But a doctor prescribed you Xanax, and through your social issues, that was your way of coping. And then, of course, you meet a young man, probably completely smitten at this young
Hmm.
age, dealing
Yeah,
with the rejection from your friends and your close peers. That's how this life started. And so
yeah,
on the outside, we look at this and we see this like, oh my God, people probably looked at you like she's just a junkie, when in fact, this stemmed from a medical professional who gave you
hmm,
something that you probably didn't really need to use at that young age. But
yeah,
this
yeah.
is how it started.
Yeah. And no warning or anything. That's what's so crazy was he never told me, he never told my grandma that these, are addictive and to make sure that you take them correctly. No, none of that. I had no idea. And at that age, I was so against drugs because my mom, I was raised by my grandparents because my mom she didn't want to be a mom. And I wouldn't say like she's an addict, but she's not like me. And so like when she had me, she was like smoking weed, taking nerve pills, and like doing meth here and there, and she just didn't want to be a mom. So my grandparents took me and my brother in, and my grandparents are amazing. I'm very, very blessed that I had them. I had an amazing childhood, had basically everything that I ever wanted because of them. And if I wouldn't have had them, I don't know what would have happened to me. I don't even know if I would be alive today. That's how bad it was with my mom. I love her. I love her. We have an okay relationship today. But that's taken a lot of work and a lot of time for me to get there.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Now, let me ask you this. Now, with the drug use starting with Xanax, did you ever get to a point where you felt like this was not enough anymore and that's what led to other drugs? Because usually it's marijuana is the gateway drug, right? That's what they
right.
say. You start off with marijuana, but that wasn't your case. You started out with Xanax prescribed by a medical professional, and then
Hmm.
it went to marijuana. Is that safe to say?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, along with other drugs. Now, did you
Yeah.
ever get to a point where you felt like Xanax just wasn't enough and that's what led to the use of other drugs?
Um, I sort of, I think so. Eventually it led to an opiate addiction, but the way that happened was my doctor, so I have scoliosis and I had like knee injuries from cheerleading and riding horses, and so the doctor would give me pain pills. Eventually, with my addict brain, I learned how to manipulate doctors very well. So I would go to multiple different doctors and I would get all these prescriptions, and I never even took the pain pills. I would just give them away to people, and I would just want to take my Xanax. And cuz Xanax back then, it was just like it took away everything. I didn't have not a care in the world, not a stress, nothing. But when I would come off of them, I would go insane. Like I would cut myself, I would try to pull my hair out. And my grandma would she didn't know how to handle me being like that. And it was just breaking her heart that her once perfect little angel had turned into this, little like devil. And but anyways, when I met my ex-husband, we were married for 9 years, he would beg me not to take the Xanax and to take the pain pills instead, because when I would take the Xanax, I mean, I was just, you couldn't control me. I was just crazy, off the chain. And so he wanted me to kind of be more aware. And so, you can take opiates and feel really good, but still kind of be aware of what you're doing, unlike with Xanax. So that's kind of what led me into the whole opiate thing. But once I discovered opiates, it was over. It was over. Like, I got a really, really bad opiate addiction, and it was fed by all of these doctors, you know. They had to have known. I don't see how I think, these doctors had to have known. How could they not know? You know, but yeah, so I would manipulate these doctors and get all these prescriptions. And, eventually it led to, once the opiates were not enough, it led to heroin use, which eventually led to needles. And it just grows. Like, that thing inside of you just grows, and it takes more and more to feed it, and, to get that feeling that you're searching for. So, yeah.
Yeah, and see, I love your transparency. I love these stories because that's one thing I never asked my biological mother, like what led to your drug use. Now, for a second, if we can go back, you stated that when you use Xanax, your behavior changed. In what ways? I mean, because we see people on the streets when they're high, we don't always know what they're high from. But when you say that your behavior changed from Xanax, in what ways did your behavior change?
Oh boy. I became like basically a different person. So, the empathy that I carry for other human beings, gone, gone. And it would cause, like, okay, so when they prescribe Xanax, it even tells you in like this little paper they give you that it can cause people to become kleptos, like where they just steal stuff. And it definitely did that to me. I would go into stores, me and my friends, and we would just steal all kinds of stuff. We would have my car trunk full of all these clothes, and I mean, just crazy. And I would never do that. The sober me, I would never do that. But on Xanax, oh yeah, and I would steal money from my grandparents. I emptied out their bank account one time, put it negative. I mean, I've just, yeah, and I would, like I said, I would cut my arms, like, yeah, and so I would go into these like weird psychotic states where I would scream and cry and cut myself, and especially when I was coming off of them, when they were starting to leave my system, I would just become crazy, and I would never remember. Like, I would wake up the next day and have no recollection of what I did the night before. I would sleep with random people. I mean, just insane things that I would never do. So it just kind of made me like the complete opposite, and it just made me evil, and I had no empathy for anybody else.
See, that's what I find so strange and so odd about the field of pharmaceuticals because
Mhm.
this is a medically prescribed drug, and you are now acting in a way that you would not normally act. You have behavior issues that you don't even remember, causing you to even become a thief in a sense. And
Mhm.
so you wake up a brand new day, a brand new person with no recollection from what happened the night before. And you probably have people asking, Teela, what happened to you last night? Like, what were you doing? Like, where did all of this come from? And you're probably, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
What happened to me? So
Yeah.
that has to be jarring because you're like, what are you talking about? So,
They're telling you that you did these things, and it makes you feel like shit,
yeah,
knowing that you did that. And so then what do you want to do? You want to take more Xanax because you want to forget about the things that you did, and then you'll just do it all over again. But you keep doing it to cover up all the bad feelings that you have because of the shit you've done, and you start to really hate yourself because all that stuff piles up, and you start to realize all the damage that you've done to your life and to the people's lives that you love. And so you do more drugs to kind of, shove that down and not have to feel those feelings.
wow. Now, you also talk about your incarceration. Did your incarceration stem from you stealing things, or what led to that?
No, I honestly, I don't know how I never did get in trouble for stealing at stores. I'm not sure how I never got caught, but no, all of my charges that led to me being incarcerated was all possession charges. So, like possession of meth, possession of controlled substance, possession of needles, possession of fentanyl, heroin. I can't even tell you how many felonies I have. I have so many, and so I've been to prison twice, a total of 5 years. And I have been on house arrest now for almost 2 years, and I got sentenced to 10 to 5. So I still have 3 years to go, but I'm going to file a modification in January, and I think I'm going to get off of it early because
Good
I've
for
done
you.
so well. So,
Good for you.
yeah, so I'm hoping for that. But yeah, I've lost a lot of years of my life, because of it, incarceration, and just because of being on drugs in general, because my daughter, who's now 18, I think she was 7 when I first started going to jail, and all of that started happening. So she was still young, and my son is only 18 months younger than her. So they're not that far apart. So they were very young when all that started to happen. So those are very precious times, and they grow so fast at that age. So I miss a lot, being incarcerated and stuff. And I was one of those people that I guess you can say I got lucky because I had my grandma and grandpa to kind of step in, and where I lacked as a mother because of drugs, they would be there, like financial issues, housing, things like
Yeah.
that. Because I was always there with my kids, but I wasn't really there because I was
Yeah.
high. I was nodded off with my head in the floor, drooling on myself, or, locked in the bathroom for hours with needles in my arm instead of really being there. And in my mind, I justified it as, well, I'm here, like I'm not out partying, I'm here, but yeah,
You were present, but you weren't necessarily there. I mean, like, would that be
yes,
safe to say? Yeah.
yes,
So,
yeah.
and I want to make it very clear that, when we have these conversations, this is for educational purposes only.
Hmm?
There's never any judgment. We all come from different walks of life. We all have a story. And in this season of storytelling, I want to be very clear that we are just sharing our stories. We are
Hmm.
not here to judge anyone because I don't have a
Never.
perfect life. I have never lived a perfect life. None of us have. So just because I've never had a drug addiction does not mean, oh, I'm perfect. Absolutely not. I'm so far from perfect. So I just wanted to make that clear to anyone who watches this, because in telling your story, it takes a lot of strength to get to the point where you really feel like, hey, let's talk about
Hmm.
it. Because, I'm talking about it. I'm walking shamelessly, and there's nothing any of you can do about it. So that's a way of taking back control of your life and taking your power back. And so I just wanted to
Yes.
take that moment to commend you, because I thank you and it's amazing. Now, with that, Teela, I want to ask, when you came out of your addiction and when you finally started to walk into sobriety, did you ever feel like you should carry shame or regret for not being as present as you wanted to be with your children or anything like that? Like, what revelation did you have when you finally walked into your sobriety?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I had a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, and it took me a long time to get past that. Um, so I've had several attempts at sobriety, and I would be sober for like 4, 5, 6 months, and I would relapse. And a lot of times that was because I hadn't worked through enough things, to really be able to accept what I've done and move past it. I would shove it down and try to forget about it. So, because of that, I would always end up relapsing. And so once I finally decided that I was going to face the shit that I have done and the people that I have hurt, I was finally able to move past it and succeed. But it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of being honest with myself and accepting that I had done these things and I had hurt the people that I loved. And, you know, just because, yeah, grandma and grandpa were there to take care of them while you were in prison, they still didn't have their mom. You know, they wanted me there. And in my mind, my mind was so warped that I had convinced myself that it was better for me to have been in prison and then be with my grandparents than to have me, because I was worthless, you know. So this was actually better. It's what I had convinced myself, in a way to make me feel better and a way to justify it, right?
Right.
But I was very wrong. They wanted me there. They always wanted to be with their mom. And I was a good mom when I was mentally there, you know. Um, and there was a long stretch where I was on pain pills, but I was doing okay, you know, like I was able to have a job, I was able to like be a mom and things like that, but I still wasn't fully Teela because I still had that addiction. I just wasn't completely obliterated all the time, you know. So and I would justify that, you know, that, well, these prescriptions come from a doctor and
Right.
I'm not nodding off, I'm not drilling on myself, so what's wrong? There's nothing wrong with this, you know. And I would justify it in my mind like that. Um but yeah, so I had a lot of guilt and shame to work through. And I think that being on house arrest and knowing that I was facing so much time in prison, that scared me because I didn't want to be in prison and my grandma die while I'm in there, you know. And that was a huge fear of mine because I'm really, really close to my grandma. So, you know, I had a lot of time on house arrest to kind of focus on myself and learn about myself, forgive myself, and sat down and had conversations with my daughter, you know, like allowed her to just say what you want to say, get it out, you know, whatever I've done to you, like this is your chance to just, you know, let me have it.
Yeah.
And so, and we did that and we worked through all of it. We have an amazing relationship today. And my son, we have a good relationship, but at the second time I went back to prison, my grandma, uh, she got breast cancer. So she was very sick. And it was really hard for her to take care of both of them and, you know, me not be here. So he ended up going to live with his dad. And so when I got out, he was there at his dad's. He had made friends and he was happy there. And so who was I to just rip him away from that and say, well, I'm home now, so you come back to me? You know, I couldn't do that. If he said, Mom, I want to come home, absolutely, nothing would have made me happier. So I had to basically learn how to adjust to this life without the son that I once had, you know, because he was little. He still slept beside me. I still tickled his back for him to go to sleep. We would cuddle every night, watch movies together. And then when I got out, he was now a little older, had girlfriends, you know. It was very different. So I had to learn to adjust to this life without that little boy attached to my hip, you know. So that was hard. And I had to realize that it was this way because of me, because of my choices, because of the things I did. That's why this is now the way it is. And I realized that he was hurt from this because he came over to visit the first time after I got out of prison, and he was acting out. He was throwing cat food at Lexi, his sister, and my niece, and he was just acting out. And I kept yelling at him like, Kobe, stop, stop. And he just would not listen. And finally, like, I was like, Kobe, stop, you know, and kind of shook him. And he looked at me and he said, you promised me you wouldn't go back to prison, and you did. And he slammed the door in my face. And, you know, right then it kind of woke me up like, okay, you know, like, yeah, I've hurt this little boy and he's he's not over it yet, and he's got to deal with that and work through that. So I've been kind of allowing him to do that, and we have a very good relationship, but not the way I would like it to be. He still lives at his dad's, and but he's happy there, and that's okay. So I can't be selfish with it. So, but yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. You just said so much, and oh my God, I just want to first off, I want to say thank you to your grandparents, because if it were not for them, your children would have likely been turned over to the state,
They would have. Yeah.
separated. They
Yeah.
would probably not have any connection with their biological family. But because your grandparents stepped in to do what
Hmm.
loving grandparents do, they saved your children. So thank
Yes.
you, Grandma, Granddad, for that.
Yes.
Because one of the things that my birth mother shared with me was that in her sobriety, when she finally decided to get clean, she was told in rehab the last thing she should do is go looking for her children, because in the event we rejected her, it could cause a relapse. And oddly, I was the one who sought after her, found her, which allowed us to maintain a relationship. And I expressed to her that my adoptive parents sort of did for me what your grandparents did for you. They gave me a great life. I never had any issues, with my family or anything like that. But it was because, I was adopted very early. And so growing up with my family, that was the only family that I knew. So it didn't allow any room for anger.
Yeah.
It was just always that curiosity. So, and when my birth mother shared that with me, I wondered, like, okay, now that you're clean and now that I found you, now that you know that I'm not upset, are you okay? And she expressed that she was fine with that. But it's just so odd that, what the state will allow. The state will look at you as unfit. They will call you all types of names, and they will do everything that they can to make sure you have no connection, even in sobriety, with your
Hmm.
children. And
Yeah.
so I find that to be so odd. But what I enjoy about this story is the fact that you did have the courage, you had the strength to know that at some point in time I have to do what's right by myself and by my children in order for us to have a healthy relationship. Now, did you ever get to a point where even though you wanted your son to come live with you, you understood his position of saying, I want to stay with daddy? Did you understand his place there?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely understood it. Growing up, Kobe was always like a daddy boy instead of a mommy's boy. It was kind of opposite. And Lexi was always a mommy's girl. So, cuz Kobe's dad was not Lexi's dad, but he started raising her from the time she was 3 months old, and then we got married, and then we had Kobe. So Kobe was always very, very close with his dad. So the fact that he moved in there after I went back to prison was not surprising. And I'm actually grateful that he had a dad that was decent enough to be able to take him in that time when my grandma just was not fit to take care of him. Um, Back then Lexi was very easy to take care of. She did never caused no trouble. She always did her homework, behaved real well. Kobe was more hyper, and you had to make sure that he did his homework or he wouldn't do it. Just he was a little bit more difficult, needed a little bit more attention than Lexi did. So with her being so sick and going through chemo and radiation, she just couldn't do it. And Grandpa, Kobe wouldn't have wanted Grandpa to raise him because my grandpa's like very strict military style person. And so yeah, I totally understood Kobe going to live with his dad. And they're just one town away, so he's not far, but he
Right.
was able to make a lot of friends while he was there. And I it would not have been right for me to just pull him away from all of that.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever ask yourself, and like now that you're an adult, in hindsight, how come the doctor gave me drugs instead of someone thinking I needed therapy? Because to prescribe such a drug, or such a strong drug like Xanax on a teenager to cope
Yeah.
with social issues and anxiety issues, I think it would have been more fitting to just sit on someone's couch and just let it all out. I mean, did you ever ask the question, like, how come therapy wasn't an option for me? Why did I have to take this drug?
I absolutely have thought about that, and I've thought to myself, if they would have just got me the help that I actually needed back then, things might have been very, very different. They probably would have been if that doctor would have said, okay, this is what's happening. There's some anxiety going on, this, and that. So you need to go see a therapist or a counselor, whatever, and we'll work through that. And maybe a different type of medication besides Xanax. I think things could have been very different because I could have worked through that. I would have had help doing so because my grandma she was like a good mom, but she didn't know how to help me through that. And she was kind of mad at me anyways because that boy that caused all this issue with the girl, he was a very, very popular basketball star, and I was the young cheerleader. And she kept telling me, Teela, don't do it. Don't do it. He's going to break your heart. Don't do it. That girl's going to be mad at you. Because that girl was my age. She had lost her virginity to this guy. They had been together 2 years. And she and I weren't friends, but she was friends with a lot of my friends. Um, and as a female, I should have had enough respect to be like, no. But the fact that he was so cute, was so popular, like I just, I fell
Yeah,
into it. And
yeah. I mean, what were you? Probably 17, 18 years old at the time, give or take,
I
in
think
that
I
age
was only
range.
like 14.
I mean,
14?
right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you don't have the maturity capacity to think on a level where, oh, maybe I should just not deal with him. You're
Yeah.
14. I'm
Yeah.
14. He's cute. She and I aren't friends. I can do this.
Yep.
Nobody's thinking on a mature level like, oh, okay, let me not go this route because, I can see who's thinking about being led down the wrong path at 14 years old. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But grandma knew and grandma
She
saw
knew.
what,
Yeah.
yeah, grandma saw what you couldn't see because of course she's the elder, you're the teenager, and she's just trying to guide you, and you're like, no, grandma, I understand what you're saying, but at that age, the elders don't want to see us dating and having crushes and things like that anyway.
Yeah.
So of course you didn't know it was going to lead to all of this. Let me ask you this, Teela, did you notice in your drug use that maybe you responded differently to all of the drugs that you use, say for instance heroin, Xanax, whatever? Did you notice a different response in your behavior to these different drugs?
To each one. Yeah. Yeah, I
Really?
did kind of. So like certain drugs would make me do things that I would never do, like Xanax. Um, Meth, whenever I would do meth, like especially when I would inject it, I would definitely do things I would never do, and I would do weird things, and I would like sit on the floor and like pick at my skin or pick at the floor, or just weird. Like one time we went shopping, my grandma, my daughter, and I, we went shopping, and I had all of these clothes at this store, and I just sat down in the middle of the store with all these clothes, like going through them. And I would do that all the time. We would go in stores and I would just sit down in the aisle and start moving stuff. And that would only happen with the meth. And with heroin, I would do things like nod off, sit down and my head be at the floor. So, yeah, definitely different reactions with each
Yes.
one.
Amazing. See, and I ask these questions again out of pure ignorance because growing up, you see addicts on the street, and for us, it was just, oh, that's just a crackhead. That's just
Yeah.
someone out doing crack. When in fact, it may not be crack. I don't know,
Right.
how you respond to different drugs because I always wonder if in fact, like, well, when marijuana doesn't do it, what does meth do? Or if meth doesn't do it, what does cocaine do? If cocaine doesn't do it, what does heroin do? I'm always asking these questions and I'm always wondering how did your life start and what led to this person being in this lifestyle that they have right now? And it's just something that is very difficult for us to comprehend because we don't walk in those footsteps. We didn't live what Teela lived, and we didn't know what it was like to be ostracized by our peers because of a boy and a girl at 14, 15 years old. But
Right.
oddly, this is your reality, this is your life, and this is what led to all of this. And so now going back to the relationship you have with your mother, what's that like? Are you helping her with her addiction, with your work in sobriety, in the sobriety field? What's that like?
So we don't. Okay, so let me explain it like this. So we all live, my grandparents, my mom, my brother, me, we all live on the same property. So we see each other a lot. Different houses, same property. So I see her a lot, but just because I see her outside doesn't mean I'll talk to her. If she speaks to me, then I will, and I'm nice to her. But I do kind of keep my distance just because um, it keeps the relationship in a better state. I feel like the more we are around each other, the worse it gets, we can start the little bickering because she'll say something that just sets me off and I'll just go. So I really just kind of try to keep my distance. But she is doing a little bit better. She's pretty much sober. I mean, she smokes weed. She will always do that. And I really don't have a problem with it anymore. If she doesn't have it, she's really like, she's very, acts crazy if she doesn't have it. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, I just try to keep my distance from her because it's easier that way for both of us. And but used to, like, we would physically fight each other, and in front of my kids and everything. I just could not control myself, and I would get so mad because she would lie about stuff, or she would try to get my kids taken from me, and just doing things like that. And so I really resented her for that. Like, you didn't even want your kids. Like, I want my kids, and you're trying to get them taken from me. Is kind of how I saw that. So, um, but I've really tried to let that stuff go.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that it worked out in your favor, because it would be extremely difficult for you to get your children back. And I don't know what the state laws there are, or anything like that, but I do know that it is so easy for the state to take your children away, displace them,
Yeah.
and and let you just deal with. And then they don't realize that as a recovering addict, you're only sending me back to my addiction by
Right.
not allowing me to see my children, by not allowing me to hug and have access to my children. So while I'm trying to get my life together and have visitations with my children, because I've seen it so many times, my parents fostered nearly 40 kids, give or take.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's, yeah. And so it's like when you see that the parents are trying to get themselves on track. I've seen children be taken away from my parents and our family, not placed back with their biological family, but with another home. Why?
Oh,
It's you're just tossing them around at this point, because
yeah.
why not leave them where they are?
Yeah.
It's just one of those stories. And this is why I'm so thankful to your grandparents for what they did, because I've seen foster care and adoption firsthand. And the only thing they needed was to say, I can't be, a mom or a dad to my grandchildren anymore. And in your condition, your child could have very well, their life could have been signed off to someone
Oh,
else. And
yes.
Teela could likely still be out here on drugs. So I am,
Yeah.
again, so thankful to your grandparents for stepping in and doing
Yes.
what they did. It's
Yes.
amazing. Now, let's get to the good part in your work of working in sobriety, because that takes a lot to help someone recover from the very demon that had you bound. So let's talk about your work in the sobriety field.
Yeah, so I think that we are all most qualified to help the person that we once were, because when you have went through something and you've overcome it, that's when you can really help somebody else do the same thing, I think. So, yeah, we're most qualified to help the person we once were. And a lot of drug addicts will tell you that they would much rather have a counselor that has been through it and understands than somebody that just learned it all from a textbook. And I was the same way. And I really I really think that this is what God wanted me to do, because I could just see, when I look back, I can see the way that He put certain people, places, situations in my life for certain things to happen, and for the same for me getting sober. Little things that he did that led me to here. Like, honestly, right now I should be in prison for a long time, and the one time that I really honestly deserved to go to prison, I didn't get sent to prison. All the other times, like, I needed to go because I needed to get off drugs. But, like, I had gotten charge after charge after charge, drug charge, and I I had already been in so much trouble. So I got very, very blessed to be on house arrest. And a lot of people don't understand it. They're like, "How can you be so grateful to be on house arrest?" And I'm like, "Oh, you just you
Right.
don't understand, because the alternative
Right.
is, So I am very, very grateful to be where I'm at, and I have done a lot of self development work on myself, and I absolutely love self development. I love to read books. I read a book called The Secret, by Rhonda Byrne. I think is how you say your name, and that absolutely changed my life. I loved. I bought so many of her books. I've got like 4 or 5 of her books because I loved The Secret so much, and it really helped me to see that the reason my life was the way it was because of me and the way that I thought, and now that I think differently, I attract better things into my life, and it's true. And I've had so many like random things happen to me that are good, that it's just like, back in the day I had random bad things happen to me, and now all these good things come into my life, and I'm so grateful for it. And it's not that life is perfect by any means, but
Right.
it's really, really great. And I know that it's going to just get better and better. And I'm in school right now, at Ivy Tech, to become a licensed clinical addictions counselor. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, and like, it would be great to actually become a therapist, but I don't want to go to school for that long. I didn't want to go to school honestly at all, and I was like, why do I need to go to school? Like, I can help these people. I know I
Right.
can, because I know what to do. I've overcame it. But
Right.
there are so many different routes to recovery. It's not
Yeah.
just one size fits all. There's so many different ways, and everybody's different. And what works for me might not work for the next person, and that's okay. And that was something that I had to realize, was that just because the typical, like, NAAA route did not work for me. I tried it for years, and I thought something was wrong with me because it just wasn't working. Um, but that's the way it is for a lot of people. And so I had to find what worked for me, and I think that understanding my true self and why I was the way that I was, and incorporating a higher power into my life, and really understanding that I could change my life and my life really could be good. And once I realized that, because for so many years I felt stuck. I felt that that was my life and it was never going to get better. It was never going to change. And I felt very stuck. And like, before I got on drugs, I always saw my future as something great. Like, I had those big dreams. I've always been like that, big, big dreams. And so when I was in my addiction, all of that was taken from me, and I didn't have those big dreams, were non-existent, um so now that I am sober and I know that I can get to these places, I have those big, big dreams again, and that's what keeps me going every day. Like, I work towards these goals, and I have so many of them. And when I meet one, it's just so exciting that I met this goal and I can see my life changing. And um, so I was working at a treatment facility. I started working what a year and a half ago. I started working at a treatment facility, and I ended up leaving that one, which I wish I never would have done that. I left that one to go to a much larger corporation, um, and I wish I wouldn't have, because I didn't really like it there. And it was very unorganized, and they had just opened, and things were just crazy. And anyways, needless to say, I don't work there anymore. So, but I had created, I have two TikTok accounts. One that I've had for a year, where I do like online marketing and things like that. And that's something that I just learned. Like, I had no background in sales, marketing, being an entrepreneur. I knew nothing
Right.
about that. So I've just learned all those things. And so I started a new TikTok that is about recovery, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of recovering addicts that reach out to me, and they want to know, like, how did I learn how to do all this stuff I'm doing online? And I love that, because my biggest thing when I got out of prison was finding a job. And it's so hard to find a job as a felon, at least anything decent, you know. And a lot of people get discouraged, and they will go return to use because they see no hope, you
Right.
know. And so with what I'm doing, really, you're your own boss. You're an entrepreneur, so you don't even have to worry about getting turned away from a job. You know,
Exactly.
you learn these skills, and you can do whatever you want with those skills. You know, if you want to start a business doing whatever, you can do that, you know. And so that's kind of just what I've done, and trying to reach people to let them know, like, hey, there's something better. Like, you don't have to stay stuck working in that job that you hate, that you're not happy about, you know. And like I said, I've always had these big dreams. And so being an entrepreneur is, I love it, you know. And
Yeah.
so now, like, I don't work a job. I don't go into a job every day. I do everything I do from home, and
Yeah.
I'm really, really grateful for that. And anybody can do that, you know, but so many people are stuck in that mind frame of working for somebody else, because
Yeah.
they don't know that there's something out there, or they don't think that they can do it. And when they see somebody like me that's just a recovering addict, and I'm doing it, it really kind of shows people, like, man, if she's doing it, you know,
Right.
I could do it. And so I love that. And yeah, so I try to reach as many people as I can on there. And if they reach out to me, like, I'm here to help them. And I've
Yeah.
had people reach out to me just simply about recovery. And I love that, you know, I absolutely love that. And yeah, so it's just, I'm very grateful to be where I'm at today.
It's
I would have never saw me where
right.
I'm at today 3 years ago. It was hopeless.
It's
Yeah.
amazing because now you get to walk in your purpose. You had to go through all of that to get to the point now where you can walk in your purpose again,
Yes.
shamelessly, courageously, because someone who's trying to recover from an addiction does not want to necessarily listen to Doctor So and So, or someone who has all of these educational experience, because they don't share that common denominator of understanding why
Yeah.
I'm here. You're just telling me, you're
Yes.
probably looking at me through the same lenses as so many others, my family, friends, and everyone else, like, oh, I'm just a throwaway because of my addiction. But in fact, there's
Yes.
going to be someone who shares that same common denominator of using drugs and overcoming this addiction, who's going to understand me, teach me, enlighten me without the judgment. So, being that you went through
Yes.
all of that, it has allowed you to walk now in your purpose where you are able to help so many others. And, you know, again, your work is incredible. It is necessary because now you get to help people. The people that are sitting in my seat don't understand. Because we don't understand. And that's the reason why I wanted to speak with you, just for, again, educational purposes, because we don't understand. We live in
Yeah.
ignorance. And so a
Yeah.
lot of times we have questions, It really does come from a place of ignorance, and I want people to really understand that. Now, Teela, before I let you go, I want to talk about this. In your addiction, you had sellers. I mean, the dealers, right? Those who you were purchasing your drugs from on the street or whatever. What do you say to those people who were providing the drugs to the addicts? Do you have any feelings toward these people? What do you say to them?
Um, okay, so how I kind of look at that is when I had a lot of drugs, which I normally did, I was always the person that had them. I refused to sell people heroin because I did not want to be the reason that they lost their life. I refused to do it. So the people out there that are selling fentanyl and heroin and things that they know can kill people, I have no mercy for them. I think that they need to go to prison and they need to be put off the streets because that's just careless. You're playing with people's lives.
Right,
Now when I see like other, okay, like addicts that are just kind of like slinging pills here and there to provide their own addiction, to take care of their own addiction. I can see past that and I have empathy for them because they're just lost in their own addiction, and they're not out here really trying to harm people. They're just trying to feed their own addiction. And so I can understand that. But yeah, I think that, when when you are selling something to somebody that could take their life, that's a little bit different. That's different. And I have no sympathy for that. I think that they need to be in prison and not the drug addicts that are out here using the drugs. They need help,
right.
and yeah,
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because like I stated, what you just said, you just made me think about the fact that while my birth mother was carrying me, someone was providing her with drugs, knowing that she was carrying a whole nother life.
yeah,
How can you be so cruel to
yeah,
provide something that can kill someone to another human being
yeah.
as they are carrying life?
Yeah. Yes,
I
I totally agree with you. And I've seen that. I've seen women pregnant using needles, and it's very sad. It's very sad. And the person that's giving that woman the drugs is absolutely just, they're no good. The
Yeah,
woman that's using the drugs, she just needs help. She needs
right.
help. She doesn't know, she can't see past the needle in her arm, and she feels guilty and she feels like shit for what she's doing.
Yep.
Most normal ones do.
Right,
There's some people out there that have no, they don't care.
right,
They don't care, some of them, but most people do, and they feel so much guilt and shame for doing that. Yeah, I've seen it all. And, I've also seen dealers that they will not sell to pregnant women. They will not,
right,
they won't do that because they have a conscience and they're not bad people. They're just, they're just trying to
right,
get by in life and they refuse to do it. And I have respect for that because, you, some of them, they don't care. Money's more important than the life that's in their belly. But there's a lot of them that will not do that. So
right.
yeah,
And the amazing part about it, like I stated, when I finally met my biological mother, Teela, and I tell this to everyone that I speak to, I was shocked to see just how intelligent she was, how sharp she was, how articulate she was. Because in my mind, when I'm just, I guess about 9 or 10 years old, when I'm told that, about my adoption and that my birth mother had a drug addiction, in the mind of a 9 or 10 year old, however old I was at the time, somewhere between 9 and 10, I'm seeing my birth mother as a drug addict. That's the only way that I could picture her. And then I meet this woman who's sharp, who's very intellectual, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. She
like
can't be
how?
a drug addict. Like, how can she be a drug? So it killed all the narratives that I was told, even though, she would speak on it sometimes, but without going in, into detail. But I was just amazed to know that, okay, this was not her early years. Something led to her life of drugs, because obviously she's a very intelligent woman. It just blew my mind. And then for whatever reason that she started her drug use, to know that someone not only could have killed her, but could have killed me in the process, realistically speaking, my mind goes to the drug dealers. And I wonder, what are you thinking? And why would you, in fact, not try, but sell something so deadly to someone who's carrying the life of another human being? Just
Yeah.
amazing, just amazing. And so when I speak with you and people who have recovered from their addictions, it sheds so much light on the world that many of us are so ignorant to. And so it allows us to walk in a judge-free zone and show some humanity to each other, because now, listening to your story, you see how it spiraled just from what the doctor first gave you. So it's not like one morning, like I always say, Teela woke up and said, "Oh my God, I want to try Xanax today." That's really no
Right.
one's. Yeah, I mean, really,
No, never.
and so for that, I thank you so much. So now, if this in fact comes across the screen of someone who's using drugs, how can they reach you, or what help can you offer them? What advice can you offer them before I let you go? Please share something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For one, I would just like for them to know that it's not your fault and there's nothing wrong with you, and there is hope, because I was once told that I was hopeless. The courts told me that I was hopeless when they kicked me out of drug court. They said, "She's hopeless, send her back to prison." And the judge did not do it. And that's why I'm where I'm at today, because there was hope in me. As long as there is breath in your lungs, there is hope for your life. And sometimes that's the only thing that we have to hang on to, is that little piece. But if that's what you have, hang on to that, because there is hope and your life can change and it can become some so amazing, something that you could have never even imagined, and that is possible for you. It's possible for any of us. And if one person can do it, like me, that means anybody can. That's what that means. If one person can do it, anybody can do it. So, and I would love for anybody to reach out to me if they need to talk, if they need anything at all. And they can reach out to me on sorry, I'm kind of sick and my nose is stopped up. So if I
You're
sound
fine.
funny, I'm sorry. But they can reach out to me on my TikTok. It's at Becoming Teela, and it's No Addict Left Behind. So like the username is No Addict Left Behind, and then my name on there is at Becoming Teela. So go follow me on there. Reach out to me. I like to post stuff that's inspirational, educational, just entertaining. So yeah, come join my community, and just you got to hang on to that hope. Yeah.
You got to hang on to that hope. And I'm so thankful for your words and your time. um, my birth mother, she held on to her hope. I'm a drug addicted baby. I was born as drug addicted babies, but I'm here. I laugh at myself sometimes, like, oh my God, I was born a crack baby. I don't know what the drug was, but I was born with
But
a
look
drug
at
addiction.
you.
But
You
I'm alive
are
and I'm
an
okay.
overcomer. You are
Yes.
an
And
overcomer, girl.
and
Yes,
and you know
absolutely.
what? I don't even think I'm as crazy as they think I am. So, for
Yeah,
these moments, I am forever grateful. And if you all are watching this, and if you know someone who has a drug addiction, reach out to Teela. Her handles are on the screen. She is accessible. She is ready. She
yeah,
understands where you are. And she's willing to offer you help, whether you're in the same state or not. This is her life now.
absolutely.
This is her life.
Absolutely.
And I'm so thankful, because you are now in a place where you are helping people who were once like my biological mother, and so many others that are out there, and they don't see the hope. So for that, I'm
Yeah.
so forever grateful for you and your time, and most certainly the work that you do. Thank you, Teela.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on here. I was just flattered when you asked me, so I'm very grateful to be here, and I appreciate you, and I'm so glad that I got to meet you. So glad.
Likewise.
And we will definitely stay in touch.
For a fact. For a fact.
Yes.
Thank